My name is Hannah Mitchell. I'm 35 and I serve in the U.S. Army. To my family, though, it's like I've thrown my life away. At our family reunion dinner in Raleigh, my sister leaned back and sneered. Still with that little army job, huh? Laughter exploded around the table from my parents, my aunts, even the cousins. They toasted to her million-dollar deals, her sleek office and rising empire, while I sat there with my medals zipped away in my purse, my chest tight and silent. I've commanded troops in active war zones. I've led operations worth billions. But to them, I'm just playing soldier, some kid stuck in a uniform. They never showed up. Not to my graduation from the academy, not to my promotions, not once. That night, their laughter didn't just sting, it burned. Under the table, I clenched my fist and made a quiet vow I'd make them see me. Not as the daughter they dismiss, not as the sister they overlook, but as the woman they'd never dare to underestimate again. Ever felt invisible to the people who should have believed in you? Most. Tell your story in the comments and subscribe. We rise by proving them wrong. I pulled into Raleigh after a 6-hour drive from Fort Liberty, my stomach twisting with hope and dread. This family reunion was supposed to be different. I'd spent 13 years in the Army leading missions, earning honors, but maybe they'd finally see me. The house was packed, cousins, aunts, uncles, all buzzing with chatter. I walked in wearing civilian jeans to blend in, my service medals tucked away in my purse. My sister Olivia Mitchell stood at the head of the table, her voice sharp and smug. Apex Technologies just landed a $10 million deal, she bragged, flipping her hair. My father, Richard Mitchell, beamed like she'd won a Nobel Prize. "That's my girl running the show," he said, raising his glass. My mother, Patricia Mitchell, nodded, her smile wide. "Olivia's making us proud," she added, her eyes locked on her. I sat quietly, picking at my food, waiting for a chance to speak. "Hey, I just led a major mission overseas," I said, my voice steady but hopeful, thinking they'd care. Olivia snorted, cutting me off. "What, still playing with your little army job?" The table erupted in laughter. Dad chuckled. Mom shook her head. My cousins smirked like I was a kid with a toy gun. My face burned, but I forced a tight smile, gripping my fork until my knuckles whitened. Olivia leaned forward, her eyes glinting with mockery. "Come on, Hannah. When are you getting a real career? You know, one that pays real money." Dad jumped in, not missing a beat. "She's right. Apex is working with the Department of Defense now. Big leagues, Hannah." He didn't know I was overseeing their contract from the Army's side. Neither did Olivia. They never asked. Mom turned to me, her tone sharp as a blade. "Hannah, why can't you be more like Olivia? She's building something real, not chasing badges." I swallowed hard, my chest so tight I could barely breathe. The room felt like it was closing in, their voices louder, their laughter sharper. I was invisible, a seasoned officer reduced to a punchline in my own family. Olivia raised her glass again, her smirk aimed right at me. To Apex and to family success, she toasted. Everyone clinked glasses, their cheers echoing. I stared at my plate, my anger simmering, a fire growing inside me. I'd led teams through war zones, made decisions that saved lives while they toasted Olivia's bank account. They thought I was nothing. I wasn't their little Hannah anymore. I'd show them, not with words, not with tears, but with action. I pushed my chair back, my jaw set. This wasn't over. I'd make them see who I was, and it wouldn't be at this table. As I pushed my chair back from that suffocating reunion table, my mind spiraled into the past, to the moments that carved this ache in my chest. I was 22, standing tall at my West Point graduation, my uniform crisp, my heart pounding with pride. I'd scanned the crowd for familiar faces, Dad, Mom, Olivia, but the seats I'd reserved for them were empty. I'd sent them invitations, called twice to confirm. "We're tied up with Olivia's pitch meeting," Mom had said, her voice clipped. "It's a big deal, Hannah." I stood alone, clapping for my classmates, my smile hiding the sting. They never came. Not one. Years later, at 26, I earned my first major promotion, a milestone I'd dreamed of since I was a kid. I'd invited my family to the ceremony at Fort Bragg, hoping they'd see what I'd built. I waited by the stage, scanning the crowd, my hands sweaty. No one showed. Olivia texted last minute, stuck at a client dinner. "You'll be fine." Dad didn't even call back. Mom sent a card addressed to Hannah, no mention of my rank or achievement. I pinned the new insignia on my uniform alone, my chest tight with a familiar hurt. They were always too busy with Olivia's deals, her promotions, her life. The deepest cut came at 29, deployed in Syria. I was leading a critical operation, days without sleep, my team relying on me. I got a rare chance to call home, hoping to hear Dad's voice, maybe Mom's encouragement. I dialed from a dusty outpost, the connection crackling. Dad picked up, sounding distracted. "Hannah, can it wait? Olivia's closing a major contract today." Before I could respond, he hung up. I stared at the phone, my throat burning. My work grueling, life or death missions didn't matter to them. Olivia's boardroom victories always came first. I'd tried so hard to make them proud. At 24, I sent Mom a photo of me receiving a commendation for a cyber operation. She replied, "Nice, but Olivia just got featured in Forbes." At 30, I told Dad about a successful mission that saved lives. He said, "That's great, but Olivia's running a team of 50 now." Every achievement I shared was overshadowed by Olivia's success. They never asked about my work, never visited my base, never cared. I'd spent years chasing their approval, but all I got was silence or comparisons. Back then, I'd blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe my path, grit, sacrifice, service wasn't flashy like Olivia's corner office. But that night in Raleigh, as their laughter from the reunion echoed in my head, I saw it clearly. It wasn't me. It was them. They chose Olivia's world money status deals over mine. I'd carried that weight for years, each missed milestone a scar. But I wasn't that hopeful kid anymore. I'd built a life, a career, a purpose. They'd never see it, not at my graduations, not at my ceremonies, not over that crackling call from Syria. But I'd make them see it now, not for their love, but for me. The weight of those old scars from graduations and missed calls still lingered as I drove to my parents' house a week after the reunion. I wanted to try one last time to bridge the gap. In my bag was a service medal earned during a high-stakes mission overseas, one of my proudest moments. I'd carried it for months, hoping to share it with Dad to show him what I'd built. Maybe this time, they'd see me. I pulled up to their Raleigh home, my heart pounding with a flicker of hope. Inside, the living room was quiet. Just Dad, Mom, and my sister Olivia Mitchell sipping coffee. I took a deep breath and sat down, clutching the small velvet box. "Dad," I said, my voice steady, "I brought something for you." I opened the box, revealing the medal, its silver glinting faintly. "This is from a mission I led last year. It means a lot to me." I slid it toward him, my eyes searching his face. Richard Mitchell glanced at it, then pushed it back across the table. "Hannah, that's nice," he said, his tone flat, "but I don't need trinkets. Olivia's got a big presentation with Apex tomorrow. That's what matters." My chest tightened, but I kept my face, still hoping Mom would say something. Patricia Mitchell barely looked at the medal. "Hannah, honestly," she said, her voice sharp, "why do you keep bringing up this army stuff? Olivia's closing deals that actually change things." She gestured to my sister, who smirked, leaning back in her chair. "Yeah, Hannah." Olivia said, her eyes narrowing. "Maybe save the medals for your scrapbook. I'm pitching to the Department of Defense tomorrow. Real impact." They didn't know I was the officer overseeing Apex's contract, that my work shaped their so-called real impact. I clenched my jaw, the rejection stinging like a slap. I tried again, turning to Dad. "This isn't just a medal," I said, my voice rising slightly. "It's for saving lives, for work I poured everything into." He shrugged, sipping his coffee. "Olivia's work keeps the lights on," he said, not meeting my eyes. Mom nodded, adding, You should focus on something practical like Olivia does. The room felt smaller, their words cutting deeper than any mission I'd faced. Olivia laughed a short, mocking sound. Hannah? You're wasting your time? Stick to your little army games. I stared at the metal, its weight heavy in my hands. I'd thought it could change things, make them see me not just as their daughter or sister, but as someone who'd built something real. But they didn't care. They never would. Their world revolved around Olivia's deals, her status, her bank account. My service, my sacrifices were invisible to them. I closed the box, my fingers trembling, and stood up. Fine, I said, my voice cold. You don't want this. I'll show you what I'm worth another way. I walked out, their silence following me. That moment broke something inside me, not my resolve, but my need for their approval. I wasn't chasing their pride anymore. I'd prove my value not with gifts or words, but with my actions, my career, my strength. They'd see me not here, not now, but soon, on my terms. I left my parents' house with the medal still in my bag, its weight a reminder of their rejection, but also of my resolve. I didn't need their approval anymore. I'd prove my worth through my work. Back at Fort Liberty, I threw myself into my role as an officer, determined to rise above the sting of their words. My days were filled with high-stakes cyber operations, each one a test of skill and grit. But one mission, a critical network security audit, became my breaking point. I was tasked with leading a team to secure a classified system for a Department of Defense project. The deadline was tight. The stakes enormous. One flaw could compromise national security. I'd spent weeks preparing running simulations, double-checking code. But during the final audit, a hidden vulnerability slipped through, crashing the system in front of my team and our evaluators. The room went quiet, my stomach dropping as the screen flashed red. I'd failed publicly, spectacularly. My team looked to me, waiting for direction, but I froze, the weight of my family's dismissal echoing in my head. Maybe Olivia was right. Maybe I wasn't enough. That night, I sat alone in my office, staring at the failed audit report, my confidence shattered. I was ready to call it quits when Colonel James Parker, my mentor, walked in. Hannah, he said, his voice steady. You're not the first to stumble, and you won't be the last. He sat down, his eyes sharp but kind. Failure doesn't define you. It's what you do next. I shook my head, my voice tight. Colonel Parker, I let everyone down. This was my shot. He leaned forward, unyielding. You think I got these eagles without screwing up? You fix it. You learn, you keep going. That's leadership. His words hit hard. I'd spent years proving myself to a family that didn't care, but here was someone who saw my potential. Over the next week, Colonel Parker worked with me, dissecting the audit, pinpointing the flaw, a subtle coding error I'd overlooked. We rebuilt the system line by line, testing it until it was ironclad. He didn't sugarcoat my mistakes, but he didn't let me drown in them either. You're tougher than this, Hannah, he said during one late-night session. Show them what you're made of, not your family, but yourself. When we ran the audit again, the system held. The evaluators nodded, my team cheered, and I felt a spark of pride I hadn't known in years. Colonel Parker clapped me on the shoulder. That's the officer I know, he said. I wasn't just fixing code, I was rebuilding myself. I realized then that my family's rejection didn't define me. Their words, Olivia's smirks, Dad's shrugs, Mom's comparisons were noise. My work, my growth, my strength were what mattered. That victory at Fort Liberty wasn't just about the audit. It was about learning to stand up after a fall, to lead through doubt, to trust my own worth. Colonel Parker didn't just help me fix a system, he showed me I could fix myself. I wasn't done proving my value, not to my family, but to the world I'd built here. I'd keep pushing, keep leading, keep fighting, and I'd do it for me. The victory at Fort Liberty had reignited my fire, but as December rolled in, a quiet ache settled in my chest. Christmas was coming, and the thought of another holiday with my family's judgment, Olivia's smirks, Dad's shrugs, Mom's comparisons felt unbearable. I needed something else, something real. That's when Colonel James Parker, my mentor, invited me to his family's Christmas dinner. "You're not spending the holidays alone, Hannah," he said, his voice firm. I hesitated, but his insistence won me over. I arrived at Colonel Parker's house near Fort Liberty, my nerves buzzing. Susan Parker, his wife, greeted me at the door with a warm smile. "Hannah, come in," she said, pulling me into a hug that caught me off guard. The house was filled with laughter and chatter, a stark contrast to the cold silence of my family's reunion. At the table sat Brian Carter, my teammate from the cyber unit, his grin wide as he waved me over. "About time you showed up," he teased, passing me a plate. I sat down, my shoulders easing for the first time in weeks. Colonel Parker raised a glass, his eyes steady. "To the team," he said, "and to those who've got your back." I clinked glasses with them, a warmth spreading through me. Susan leaned over, her voice soft. "Hannah, James talks about you all the time. Your family here." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Family. A word I'd chased for years, only to find it here, not in Raleigh, with Olivia's taunts or Mom's lectures. Brian shared stories of our missions, exaggerating my role in the audit fix to make me laugh. "Hannah saved the day," he said, winking. I shook my head, but Susan squeezed my hand. "You're tougher than you let on," she said. Colonel Parker nodded, adding, "She's one of the best. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Their words hit deeper than I expected, filling a void my family had left. For years I'd fought for Dad's pride, Mom's approval, Olivia's respect. But here with these people, I didn't have to prove anything. They saw me, my work, my heart, my strength. As the night went on, we swapped stories, Colonel Parker's early deployments, Susan's knack for keeping him grounded, Brian's ridiculous pranks on base. I shared a little about my missions, careful not to dwell on the pain of my family's rejection. "You ever think about going back?" Brian asked, his tone gentle. I paused, then shook my head. "They don't get it," I said. "But you all do." Susan smiled, refilling my glass. "You've got us now," she said. I felt a weight lift, a sense of belonging I hadn't known I needed. By the end of the night, I wasn't just an officer or a name on a roster. I was part of something bigger, a family that chose me, not because of blood, but because of who I was. Colonel Parker walked me out, his voice low. "Hannah, you're stronger than you know. Keep pushing." I nodded, my heart full. I'd spent too long chasing a family that didn't see me. Now I had one that did. And that was enough. The sense of belonging I'd found with Colonel Parker and my team fueled me as I dove into my biggest assignment yet. At Fort Liberty, I was tasked with overseeing a billion-dollar cybersecurity project for the Department of Defense, a contract tied to Apex Technologies, my sister's company. My role was to ensure their systems met the military's stringent standards: no leaks, no flaws, no compromises. The responsibility was immense, but after the audit victory, I felt ready. I led a team of analysts running tests, reviewing code, and coordinating with Apex's engineers. Every decision I made carried weight, and I thrived on the challenge, knowing this project could shape national security. Weeks into the project, I got a call from my mother, Patricia Mitchell. Her voice was tense, not warm. "Hannah, we need to talk," she said. I braced myself, expecting another lecture about Olivia's success. "Olivia's struggling with her Apex contract," Mom went on. "It's with the Department of Defense." "You're in the Army, can't you pull some strings?" I froze, my grip tightening on the phone. They didn't know I was the officer overseeing that very contract. I kept my tone even. "Mom, I don't do favors like that. My job is to protect the system, not bend rules." She sighed, exasperated. "Hannah, just help your sister. This is her big break." I hung up, my jaw clenched. The next day, my father, Richard Mitchell, called. "Hannah, Olivia's under pressure," he said, his voice heavy with expectation. "You're in the military. Do something to make this easier for her." I stared at my desk papers stacked with Apex's system specs. "Dad?" I said, my voice firm. "I can't. My work doesn't work that way." He scoffed. "You're always so rigid. Olivia's carrying the family name, help her out." I ended the call, my heart pounding. They thought my job was a tool for Olivia's success, not a career I'd built through years of sacrifice. Then Olivia herself texted. "Hey Hannah, I know you're with the Army. Can you talk to whoever's in charge of our DoD contract? It's a mess." Her casual tone, like she was asking for a coffee order, made my blood boil. I typed back, "Olivia, I don't interfere with contracts. Fix it yourself." She replied with a single word, "Whatever." I set my phone down, my hands shaking. For years they'd dismissed my work as a little Army job, and now they wanted me to use it to save Olivia's reputation. The irony burned. Back at Fort Liberty, I doubled down on the project. Apex's systems had vulnerabilities, sloppy code, weak encryption that my team flagged. I sent detailed reports to their engineers expecting cooperation. Instead, their lead engineer, unaware I was the oversight officer, pushed back, citing unnecessary delays. I stood my ground, insisting on fixes. My team worked late nights, stress high but morale steady. I wasn't just doing my job, I was proving my worth not to my family, but to myself and the mission. One evening, Colonel James Parker stopped by my office. "Heard you're catching heat from Apex," he said, leaning against the doorframe. I nodded, exhausted. "They're not happy with my standards." He chuckled. "Good. Keep them honest, Hannah. You're doing what's right." His words steadied me. My family saw my work as a favor to leverage. Colonel Parker saw it as duty. I wasn't bending for Olivia or anyone else. As the project neared its deadline, I knew the real test was coming. Apex's leadership, including Olivia, would present their system at a conference in Raleigh. My team's findings would be front and center, and I'd be there to ensure the truth came out. I wasn't helping Olivia, I was holding her accountable. My family's requests had shown me one thing: they'd never respect my work until it stared them in the face. I was ready to show them, not with favors, but with results. The conference hall in Raleigh buzzed with anticipation as I adjusted my uniform, medals pinned carefully to my chest. Months of grueling work on the Apex Technologies cybersecurity project had led to this moment. I wasn't here to help my sister Olivia Mitchell as my family had demanded. I was here to do my job, to ensure the system was secure, no matter whose name was on it. My team's findings, detailed in a report I clutched tightly, exposed critical flaws in Apex's work. I took a deep breath, ready to face the room, knowing my family would be there, oblivious to my role. The hall was packed with Apex executives, Department of Defense officials, and my family seated near the front. Olivia stood at the podium, her smile confident as she presented Apex's system as flawless. My father, Richard Mitchell, and my mother, Patricia Mitchell, beamed from their seats, whispering proudly about her success. I stayed in the back, unnoticed, my heart steady but my nerves electric. Olivia's slides flashed across the screen, boasting unbreakable encryption and military-grade security. I clenched my report, knowing the truth. When Olivia finished, the room applauded. Thomas Reed, Apex's CEO, stepped forward to introduce the military's evaluation. "We're honored to have the officer overseeing this contract here," he said, scanning the room. I stepped forward, my boots clicking on the floor, my uniform crisp. The room turned to me, and Thomas Reed's face lit up. He stood, saluted, and said, "Colonel, welcome." The words hung in the air, sharp and clear. A gasp rippled through the crowd. My family froze. Olivia's jaw dropped. Dad's eyes widened. Mom's hands gripped her chair. Colonel. The title they'd never heard, never cared to know, now echoed in the silence. I nodded to Thomas Reed and took the podium. "Thank you, Mr. Reed." I said, my voice calm but firm. My team conducted a thorough review of Apex's system. I opened my report projecting the findings on the screen. We identified multiple vulnerabilities, weak encryption, outdated protocols, and unsecured access points. These flaws pose significant risks to national security. The room stirred murmurs growing. Olivia's face went pale, her confidence crumbling. I didn't look at her. This wasn't personal. It was my duty. An executive interrupted his tone, defensive. "These standards are excessive," he said. I held his gaze. "They're necessary," I replied. "My job is to protect our nation's systems, not to cut corners." Thomas Reed nodded, his expression serious. "Colonel Mitchell, we appreciate your rigor. Apex will address these issues immediately." Olivia sank into her seat, her hands trembling. Dad and Mom stared at me, their pride for Olivia replaced by shock. They'd called my work a little army job, but now they saw the truth. As I stepped down, Olivia approached, her voice low and shaky. "Hannah, you could have warned me," she said. I met her eyes, unyielding. "Olivia, I told you to fix it yourself. My job isn't to save your reputation, it's to do what's right." She flinched, speechless. Dad stood, his face red. "Hannah, why didn't you tell us?" he asked. I paused, my chest tight. "I tried," I said. "You never listened." Mom reached out, her voice soft. "Hannah, we didn't know." I shook my head. "You didn't want to know." The conference moved on, but the air between us was heavy. My family sat in stunned silence as Thomas Reed thanked me again, his respect clear. I'd spent years chasing their approval, but in that moment I didn't need it. I'd proven my worth not to them but to myself, my team, and the mission. As I left the hall, my medals glinting under the lights, I felt lighter. Their shock was their burden, not mine. I was ready for what came next. Walking out of the Raleigh conference hall, the weight of my family's stunned silence lingered behind me. Their shock at hearing Colonel welcome wasn't my victory. It was just the final push I needed. For years I'd carried their dismissal, their preference for my sister Olivia Mitchell, like a stone in my chest. But standing there with my medals glinting and my duty clear, I knew it was time to let go. I drove to my parents' house that evening, my resolve firm, ready to say what I'd held back for too long. I found my father, Richard Mitchell, and my mother, Patricia Mitchell, in their living room, still reeling from the conference. Olivia sat across from them, her face tight with frustration. I stood in the doorway, my uniform still on, my voice steady. "I'm done," I said. "For years I tried to make you see me, my work, my sacrifices. But you never did. You chose Olivia's world over mine every time." Dad's face hardened. "Hannah, we didn't know you were a colonel," he said, his tone defensive. I shook my head. "You didn't know because you never asked." Olivia stood, her voice sharp. "Hannah, you embarrassed me today," she said. "You could have helped me, but you threw me under the bus." I met her gaze, unflinching. "Olivia, I did my job. You wanted favors, not fairness. That's not who I am." Mom reached out, her eyes pleading. "Hannah, we're family. We can fix this." But her words felt hollow. "No, Mom," I said, my throat tight. "Family doesn't ignore you, belittle you, or demand you bend your principles. I'm done chasing your approval." The silence that followed was heavy, final. I turned and walked out, their voices fading behind me. That night, I packed my things and made a decision. Fort Liberty had been my home, but a new assignment was waiting in Arlington, Virginia, near the Pentagon. It was a fresh start, a chance to build a life free from the shadows of their expectations. By week's end, I'd loaded my car and driven north, the Raleigh skyline shrinking in my rearview mirror. Arlington felt different, open, unburdened. I settled into a small apartment, my medals and commendations arranged on a shelf, not for anyone else, but for me. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my work, leading cybersecurity initiatives, with a clarity I hadn't felt before. I thought about Colonel James Parker, my mentor, who'd seen my strength when my family couldn't. I thought about Susan Parker, his wife, and my teammate Brian Carter, who'd welcomed me as family at that Christmas dinner. They were the ones who mattered, the ones who'd chosen me, not out of obligation, but because they saw who I was. My family's absence no longer stung. It was their loss, not mine. Looking back, I realized the lesson wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. My worth wasn't in their praise or Olivia's shadow. It was in the missions I'd led, the lives I'd protected, the team I'd built. I'd spent years thinking I needed their validation to feel whole, but I was whole all along. My strength, my purpose, my life. They were mine, forged through every challenge, every choice, every step I took alone. To everyone who's followed this journey, thank you. Thank you to Colonel Parker, Susan, and Brian for showing me what family really means. Thank you to my team at Fort Liberty for standing by me. And thank you to all of you listening for being part of this story. If it resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Tell me what's your story of finding your worth. I'm reading everyone.